Welcome back to Howie's mini lesson. Hey, you've made it through one entire unit. Only 4 more to go, right? Okay, sounds overwhelming, but I promise we'll get through it together. So we are starting unit 2, and here is the mini lesson for section 1. And I'm going to again break this up into probably 2 parts because I don't want these to get too lengthy. Plus, maybe you know some of this stuff and you don't have to watch every single mini lesson. So this first one, again, overall the entire unit is going to discuss photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that coming up actually in section 2. Section 1 actually is going to focus on more of the kind of simplistic parts. I shouldn't say simplistic, it's actually the detailed parts, but kind of the inner workings of photosynthesis. But first, some lovely images. Obviously, we know photosynthesis deals with sunlight and plants. That's an overall general picture. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll come back to that, and hopefully maybe by the end of this week when you watch the next mini lesson for the section 2. All right, so lovely photosynthesis. But again, let's start with the basics. Now, it's interesting, what I'm going to talk about in this mini lesson may seem like it has absolutely nothing to do with photosynthesis, but I promise come section 2, when you start listening to these mini lessons and reading through your lesson in the course, you're going to see how it all fits together. So bear with me while we go through a little bit more chemistry, just a teeny bit, okay? So start with the basics. A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, just kidding. It's late. This is what happens when it's late. So the first 2 things I want to talk about are exergonic and endergonic reactions. Okay? We talk a lot about energy when we get into photosynthesis because obviously photosynthesis requires energy, it produces energy, all sorts of things require, and any kind of process, especially metabolic process, which is kind of the transferring of energy, it requires energy, and sometimes it, well, not sometimes, it always releases energy. So we're going to get to that when we talk about the laws coming up. But first, before I get ahead of myself, okay, exergonic reactions. So processes that release or give off energy are called exergonic reactions. So kind of easy. My little picture to go along with it is a lovely fireworks show, okay? Who doesn't love fireworks? I mean, man, I'm still in awe. I'm like sitting there watching fireworks and like, oh, ooh, ah, yeah. But obviously we know that anytime something is shot off in the air as fireworks, huge explosion, release of energy. That's a great example of exergonic reactions, okay? Endergonic, on the other hand, are reactions that require or take in energy, okay? So basically things that are taking in energy, and my example is this lovely plant here. Plants actually take in energy. It's an endergonic reaction that's going on within plants when photosynthesis occurs, okay? So it's kind of, you know, it seems like a simplistic kind of 2 terms there, but don't get them confused. So exergonic, you're releasing energy. Endergonic, you're actually taking in energy to form a reaction, okay? Obviously, as humans, and let me kind of relate that to ourselves, we do both. I mean, we expend energy anytime we are, you know, say we go on a run or a hike or something, you're expending energy, but you're also, you know, you're releasing energy into the atmosphere as heat because we're really releasing heat from our bodies. But you also are doing endergonic reactions because you need to eat in order to basically have that energy to expend. Okay, so really a lot of times many organisms undergo both of those types of reactions at the same time. Moving on, look at all that lovely stuff. This entire thing actually encompasses the entire unit. I fit all of it into this lovely circle. That should make you happy, right? So big picture, now to the little picture. Let's go into the laws of thermodynamics. You're going to see this in your text, okay? So I want you to make sure you go through them. But the thermodynamics, that is kind of like this big word. I have this friend who's an engineer. She's really smart. She works on rockets. And I went into her basement, and she has like 3 books on thermodynamics. And I'm like, so you sit there and read those every night? Anyways, I think it's a cool word. But hey, I'm going to define it for you. So thermodynamics is the field of science dealing with the study of energy. Obviously, we're talking about energy, a ton of energy. So thermodynamics is the study dealing with energy. So watch this video as I watch along with you to give you a better understanding of it.
The first law of thermodynamics. Heat is work and work is heat.
Heat is work and work is heat.
Very good. The second law of thermodynamics. Heat cannot of itself pass from one body to a hotter body.
Heat cannot of itself pass from one body to a hotter body.
Heat won't pass from a cooler to a hotter.
Heat won't pass from a cooler to a hotter.
You can try it if you like, but you far better not.
You can try it if you like, but you far better not.
Cause the coal in the cooler will get hotter as a ruler.
In the cooler will get hotter as a ruler.
Because the hotter body's heat will pass to the cooler.
Because the hotter body's heat will pass to
As
the
for
cooler.
heat is work and
Work is heat and work is heat and heat is work.
heat will pass by conduction in the
Heat
heated
will
element.
pass by conduction and
Heat will pass by convection.
Heat will pass by convection and
Heat will pass by radiation.
will pass by radiation.
And that's a physical law. Heat is work and work's a curse. And all the heat in the universe is gonna cool down. Because it can't increase, then there'll be no more work and there'll be perfect peace.
Really?
Yeah, that's entropy, man. All because of the second law of thermodynamics, which lays down that you can't pass heat from the cooler to a hotter. Try it if you like, far better not.
Cause the coal in the cooler will get hotter as a ruler. Cause the hotter body's heat will pass to the cooler.
You gotta
Pass
pass
from the cooler to a hotter. Yep, try it if you like, but you don't need a cooler. Cause the coal in the cooler will get hotter as a ruler. That's a physical law.
Oh, I'm hot.
What? That's because you've been working.
Oh, Beatles, nothing.
That's the second law of thermodynamics.
Okay, so let's talk about the laws because that video described the laws. You probably didn't catch much of it, but maybe watch it again and you'll catch more. So the first law of thermodynamics, and I won't sing it, states that energy can be changed from one form to another, but it cannot be created or destroyed. You might have heard that before, okay? So basically, energy can move from one type of energy to another, from sound waves to heat waves to other waves and other types of heat. I mean, there's a ton of types of electricity, or types of energy, electricity and sound waves and, solar energy. So everything can be changed, but you're never going to create it out of nothing, and you're never going to destroy it, okay? So it exchanges, or I shouldn't say, it transforms into different forms. But I do want to tell you that every time energy is transformed into a different type of energy, a lot of times some heat is given off, and that's an energy form. So you might lose a little bit here and there, but you're not destroying it. You're losing it to the environment or to wherever, usually in the form of heat, okay? So that's the first law of thermodynamics. Pretty cut and dry, okay? Second law, but for some fire. Isn't fire so cool? So last week I was camping, and we haven't had a fire all summer long because of all the fire bans. So it's the first time we can have a campfire. And I think for like an hour I just stared at the fire because it's so mesmerizing. Okay, moving on. Second law of thermodynamics states that energy spreads out if it's not kept from doing so. In your lesson it talks about entropy, and I'm not going to get into that right now. You can read a little bit further into that. But basically, if energy is not kind of kept all, tucked in together and, confined, it's going to spread out, okay? Just kind of like when we think about diffusion, anything you go from this tight, higher concentration. So take, for instance, you're at a concert, and there's gobs and gobs of people near the stage, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so incredibly squished here. And really, if you're not enjoying yourself, all you want to do is get out of the crowd. That's kind of like diffusion and kind of like this law where energy is going to spread out if it's not kept from doing so, if it's not confined for some reason, okay? Or if someone yells, bomb, then everybody obviously goes from this higher concentration to a much lower concentration, and they move away. Not a very good example, but nonetheless, it hopefully, does its purpose. Next! Okay, moving on from the laws of thermodynamics. I know you had so much fun with that. Potential versus kinetic energy. Now, we talked about this, if you remember, last lesson. We had a nice little video from Bill Nye. Yep. He talked about potential versus kinetic, but really talked about just energy in general. So hopefully that rings a bell. But another song. I'm going to show you guys another song, and hopefully you'll just be singing it in that pretty little head of yours all day long. Okay, watch this.
The rolling boulder crashing down the mountain. That's kinetic energy. Kinetic. The boulder sitting high upon the mountain. That's potential energy. Potential. Energy in motion is kinetic. Energy that's waiting is potential. But whether it's kinetic or potential, both of them are energy. Ole! You stretch a rubber band and then release it. That's kinetic energy. Kinetic. You stretch a rubber band and then you hold it. That's potential energy. Potential. Energy in motion is kinetic. Energy that's waiting is potential. But whether it's kinetic or potential, both of them are energy. Ole! The heat that comes when gasoline is burning, that's kinetic energy. Kinetic. The energy that gasoline is stored up, that's potential energy. Potential. Energy in motion is kinetic. Energy that's waiting is potential. But whether it's kinetic or potential, both of them are energy. Ole!
Okay, hope that gets stuck in your head. But it gave you some good examples about what kinetic energy is versus potential. Okay? I don't have to explain any further, I don't think. Alright, now, the last thing we're going to do for part 1 is talk about something called oxidation and reduction. Another name for this is kind of a redox reaction. You might see that. It is the same thing as oxidation and reduction. Okay, it goes into pretty good detail in your lesson, so make sure you read through that in order to kind of help solidify what this means, because this is kind of sometimes a tough chemistry concept, okay? So oxidation and reduction. Basically, oxidation is the loss of an electron, okay? Reduction is the gain of electron. Typically when anything is undergoing some kind of a change, you might have the loss of an electron, so we call that oxidation. And reduction was when something would gain an electron. Typically those electrons that are gained are hydrogen ions, okay? Those are the most easy. Let's discuss a little bit further. So I do have a video to show you. I'm going to show you that next. And then I'll follow that up with some visuals. So hopefully you guys can get a good understanding of what this actually means, okay?
Reaction of silver with sulfur to form silver tarnish is an oxidation-reduction reaction. When silver atoms come into contact with sulfur atoms, electrons move from silver atoms to sulfur atoms. Each silver atom is oxidized when it loses one electron to become a silver 1+ ion. Each sulfur atom is reduced when it gains 2 electrons to become a sulfur 2- ion. In order for silver to lose electrons, sulfur must gain electrons, making the processes of oxidation and reduction interrelated reactions.
Okay, so maybe a bit over your head. I don't expect you to kind of totally understand this concept, but as time goes by, and especially as you take chemistry, you'll understand this a little bit more. But ultimately, They were trying to give you a good example of something that happens that you can see, and that is the tarnishing of silver. Here's just an example of basically just a diagram of what it looks like in oxidation versus reduction. Okay, so you have what we call a reducing agent, and remember, in oxidation, a compound loses electrons. Okay, so once that this agent or this molecule A has lost electrons, that's oxidized. Okay, the oxidizing agent here, remember in reduction you gain electrons. So basically when you see this molecule now you have 2 extra electrons. So the most basic way you can understand this, and then it'll all fit together as we keep talking about this throughout this unit, but oxidation is always losing electrons. Okay, reduction always gaining electrons. So in different chemical changes, you're going to have this type of a redox reaction where simultaneously you're going to have certain molecules that may lose electrons, which we call those have oxidized, where certain other molecules within that same reaction have gained electrons. That would be your reduction. Okay, so that's why we call that a redox reaction. Now here's an easy way to kind of remember this, and I have to tell you, I'm going to move this up for just a little bit so you can see this. Remember, loss of electrons is oxidation, gain of electrons is reduction. And if you need to remember that, and believe it or not, I had to learn this in high school, Leo says grr, loss of electrons is oxidation. Grr, gain of electrons, is reduction. So Leo says grr is a great easy way, cheesy but easy, that's cheesy too, but that's a great way to remember which is which. Okay, loss of electrons, oxidation. Leo says grr, gain of electrons is reduction. Okay, so again, go to your lesson, read through that, hopefully compare, or in conjunction with this mini lesson, it'll help to understand a little bit more about what's going on with oxidation and reduction. Okay, so we are going to stop there. That is part 1, and we will come back and you'll see this lovely picture once again, and we will talk about yet some more interesting stuff. Okay, bye for now.